From the Presidential Palace, Manila, Dateline Malacañang.
Good day, this is Dateline Malacañang and here are the news. Malacañang on Wednesday announced that Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. and First Lady Liza Araneta Marcos have both developed flu-like symptoms following their trip to Germany and the Czech Republic last week. The Presidential Communications Office or PCO said the first couple are taking fluids and medication to alleviate their symptoms and their vitals remain stable. According to the palace, in order to get well at the soonest possible time, their attending physician advised them to get some rest, drink medicine, and plenty of water to make them feel better. PCO Secretary Cheloy Garofil said that all of the President's appointments in the succeeding days have been cancelled.
Dateline Malacañang.
In other news stories, the position of the Philippine government that any military base in the country cannot be used as an offensive action against China remains the same. In an interview, Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. said the Philippines have no plans nor interest in attacking any person or country. The President said this has never crossed the mind of the Philippine government. President Marcos underscored that the Philippines will not allow this unless it is in the midst of war. This is the reason, the chief executive said, to why the Philippines is promoting peace amid the squabble on the South China Sea or SCS and why the Philippines is avoiding any tension in the region.
Dateline Malacañang.
Meanwhile, Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. certified the amendment to the Government Procurement Act or Senate Bill or SB 2593 as urgent. SB 2593 is already a priority measure of the Legislative Executive Development Advisory Council or LEDAC. The Government Procurement Reform Act or GPRA is expected to hasten and enhance the government's procurement process. The measure aims to require government agencies to have an organized plan and an early implementation of procurement activities. Also included in the bill is the most economically advantageous responsive bid or MEARB, which will address the award criterion as stipulated under Republic Act or RA 9184 or the Government Procurement Reform Act of 2003. The measure will not only ensure the government will save money, but also make sure that it will buy quality products and services. Under the proposed measure, the Department of Budget and Management or DBM will create procurement positions in various government agencies to ensure skilled and professional are designated as procurement practitioners of the government. The GPRA bill is currently under interpellation at the Senate.
Dateline Malacañang.
Other news stories, Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. said cutting the Philippines' interest rates is too early. This is the statement of the President when asked for his position on cutting rates due to the high interest rates in the country. In an interview, the chief executive explained that the Philippines is still fighting inflation. Even though the government has controlled or mitigated the effects of inflation, President Marcos said external shocks still continue to enter the country. However, President Marcos assured that the government is monitoring the latest situation and is studying this possibility. President Marcos also said the government does not see that this is the time to reduce interest rates in the country for we are not yet there.
Dateline Malacañang.
In a bid to strengthen the country's economy, Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. said the administration is aiming to reskill and upskill the country's workforce, enhance efforts to adjust the new technologies, and attract more investments. During the question and answer session of the World Economic Forum or WEF on East Asia at Malacañang on Tuesday, the president said to WEF President Borge Brende that Filipino workers need to improve competitiveness and keep up with the advancements under the new economy, both domestically and internationally. The chief executive said the government is making sure that investments are done properly to ensure it actually helps the country's economic growth. Let us now listen to Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.'s interview at the question and answer session of the World Economic Forum on East Asia hosted by WEF President Borge Brende.
I'm not sure if the music, Mr. President, is Davos style, but we have so great memories from your visits in Davos last year. I really enjoyed our dialogue there, and thank you so much for your speech today. As you can see, there is huge international interest in the Philippines, and we also know that Secretary Raimondo was visiting you last week with a big business delegation from the US. We are here today with the distinguished delegation, and also thank you to all our friends in the Philippines for making this happening. And this afternoon, I think you're receiving Secretary Blinken. So I think all this interest also shows that there is a lot of trust in your leadership, but also in the economic performance of the Philippines. We are expecting also very strong growth this year in the Philippines, but even more important, we do think that there is just a question of time before the Philippines is a $2 trillion economy and moves to the 18th largest economy in the world and then to the 12th. What do you think, Mr. President, are the most important measures to take in the coming year to make sure that you reach the goal of 2 trillion and that you become even a stronger economy globally?
Well, in our view, and it has been, we have been consistent in that we feel that we really, at the very, very start of this, is that we have to go back to basics, but not basics as they were before the pandemic, the new basics for the post-pandemic world economy. And we are continuing to do that. When I speak of that, I mean in terms of the food supply and nutrition for our people, the shift from from fossil fuels to renewable fuels, considering that this is done in the context of hoping to increase our power supply and to decrease the costs of that power supply. And of course, after that, after just making more efficient the bureaucracy, digitalizing as much of the economy as we possibly can. And for that, I speak mostly on the public sector. The private sector has really, by necessity, has had to keep up with the rest of the world in terms of digitalization. Unfortunately, it's the bureaucracy, the government functions that have taken the back seat. And so we are trying to work on that. And we are making good progress as we have, I think it comes from that very early recognition that the digital space is the space of growth. And so we are moving in, continues to move in that direction. So having attended to, or continuing as we have attended to the basic areas of the economy, then we now move on to the initiatives that we would like to introduce. And those are, what I spoke of in my speech, are the investments that come from private partners, even G2O also, but government-to-government investments are also something that we are hoping to increase. And these investments also must be directed properly. They cannot be just investments that are just perhaps very profitable, but do not really help the economy grow. So growth is still the main aim. I think we grow, the idea is that we grow the economy out of the doldrums of the post-pandemic situation. And so that is absolutely needed, because the truth of the matter is the Philippines does not corner any market in any world market, and therefore investments are going to be key. But these are what we speak are, of course, a commitment in the capital investments of the new sectors, not in the smokestack industries so much, but really again in the digital space and in the new technologies and in the new industries that have arisen from that. I speak of green minerals, battery production, the new technologies that we need to be adopting. So part of that, and so to play a large part in that, we are also focusing a great deal on the reskilling and upskilling of our people. So whenever we speak of investments, I always ask the prospective investor if we have, in fact, a training program, if there is a transfer of technology, because this is going to be essential. And so far, I think that it serves the interests of both the private side and the public side, that these continuous training and upskilling of our workers is conducted. Not only so that they are able to work in the areas that are important in the new economy, but also because we have a very significant part of our economy is dependent on our overseas workers. And for them to be able to compete properly in the international labor markets, those specialized skills that we are seeing are necessary, must be made, they must have that skill set so as to be able to compete and to find good positions wherever it is that they see opportunities. It has been very successful. It has been so successful, in fact, that we are always worried about the talent that stays at home. And that's why it even brings more importance and more impetus to our continuing training and development, adoption of the new technologies that are available in the world. And this is just something that technology is moving so quickly. We hold very much hope for the new technologies to solve some of these problems, but the technology moves so quickly, so we have to move quickly with it. And that is these are the areas that we have decided to focus on, to continue the growth trend of the Philippines and to make the economy stronger.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. President, for sharing this vision. And this also just underlined that we are faced with a paradigm shift with new digital intelligent economy that we're faced with. And we do strongly believe that, as you underlined, right skilling and upskilling is critical. And the generative AI and the new technologies will be a major game changer and can increase productivity with 30% in the coming decade. But there are some concerns that these new technologies will just underpin that the winner takes it all. That's only the economies of size and the big companies that can succeed, at least on the hardware side. But there is also a big software side of this. So how do you think that the Philippines are ready for being part of this growth story? You already touched on it, but are you seeing this as a challenge and a threat, or more as an opportunity with the Philippines that are such a populous country with 110 million people and very skilled in English?
Well, it's difficult to categorize it simply as a challenge or a threat, because any sharp blade cuts both ways. And we, I think, are seeing this now with AI, where we're still trying to figure out, we know how powerful it is, and we know how powerful it is going to be, even more so than it is now. We can see the necessity for AI, because there are many things that what we are doing is becoming more complicated, and we have to act very swiftly to be able to adjust to whatever occurrences there are. But again, I think I need not explain how the AI can also work against you, and but we must. There's a very clear understanding on our part that we must be part of that. Now, the asset, I mentioned this when we were in Davos, the main asset when it comes especially to the new technologies is our workforce. We have a young workforce. They are well trained. They are accustomed to working with foreign entities. English speaking is not a small aspect to that. And so it is a workforce that I think, considering especially that many of the countries surrounding us have a graying workforce, and we have begun to see the diminishing of the birth rates in some ASEAN countries. But as I always say, the Philippines is a good Catholic country, so we make sure our birth rates remain healthy.
That's it's something that other countries see as a large challenge now, with the fertility rate going so dramatically down. So I got your message. We should all listen more to the Pope in that respect. Mr. President, you're also kindly opened up for questions from some of the CEOs. But before doing so, I think we need to also address any elephants in the room. And of course, we already touched on the G2 competition between the US and China, almost half of the global economy. And we are seeing no growth in the global economy, but we are all worried that the geopolitical recession that we're faced with, the geopolitical tension, can influence negatively on growth. Your perspective on that, and of course, you also have a large neighbor in the north that you are handling. Any insight on your strategy to make sure that you can see a win-win situation there and not a lose-lose situation moving forward, but based on, of course, the interest of your country?
Well, certainly, doing all of these things that we are talking about in the context of a very volatile geopolitical situation here in the region, in Central Europe, Central and Eastern Europe, with Ukraine and the Middle East. But when I say Middle East, that's where it began, but it has now spread to other parts of the world. That certainly presents an enormous challenge, and the realignment within the great powers for a small country like the Philippines is something that we have to be able to manage, at least for ourselves. We have little influence on what the great powers will do. We do, however, we are able, however, to deal with every power. One of the first expressions of foreign policy that I made was that we are a friend to all and an enemy to none. And the only way that I see we are able to do that is to separate politics and the economy. And we'll see what's good for the economy. And so long as it does not impact poorly upon the political life here in the Philippines, then I think it is an acceptable activity to enter into. It's not, as you can imagine, because economic power is also used as political power in many of these instances. So it is not that simple, but we must continue to make that delineation, and hopefully we make the right choices so that our political stability, our political sovereignty, and sovereign rights are defended robustly, at the same time that we are able to deal with any country in the world, no matter what their political leanings might be, no matter what their alliances might be. But again, it is a difficult situation. It's a difficult problem. I do not underestimate how complicated it can get. But we, as long as we have a guiding principle, and that is to separate the two things as much as possible. It's not necessarily, it's not a binary solution, but it is something that we need to do if we are going to continue to grow the economy and yet maintain our political stability in the Philippines.
No, thank you very much. And thank you also in Davos. You were very candid on this topic, remember? And it created a lot of news on this. So it's very interesting. So now the first I will turn to is Rajev Khanna, Sumitomo Mitsui Banking Corporation, SMBC. You're very familiar with them. You're over there, Rajev. You have a mic even, yes?
Yeah, thank you, Bernip, and thank you, Your Excellency, Mr. President, for painting the growth story and aspirations for Philippines. As was mentioned, I represent Sumitomo Mitsui Bank from Japan, and we've been in the country since 1975, and last year we completed the largest FDI from Japan into Philippines under your administration. I think I do hope that this is kind of a leading indicator to more investments coming from Japan rather than us leading these FDI league tables from Japan. I think in terms of the renewable sector and sustainable infrastructure sector, that's a key focus for our bank. We have been a global player in this space, and I think I commend your administration on the very positive steps taken, including the introduction of the green lanes, as you mentioned, the simplification of the DOE process, as well as the bidding processes which have been executed, and finally also allowing increased foreign ownerships in terms of the renewable sector. I believe that if we look at the wider region in Asia, which I lead for the bank, I do see Philippines as a very important market for us. I think particularly in terms of the renewable sector, I think Philippines has a number of strengths. Historically, it has geothermal capabilities, it has pumped hydro and hydro capability, and now more recently the focus on solar and wind, I think is quite encouraging for us. So we would also like to encourage you and the administration to continue to grow this sort of process and keep a very stable pipeline of opportunities, because for banks and institutions and investors, it's quite important that we have a steady stream of opportunities which allows us to commit resources and commit investments into your country. And I think we are quite happy to basically increase our capital allocation, which we've already done when we announced our investment into RCBC Bank in Philippines. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. This is precisely the kind of, precisely the type of economic activity that would be very beneficial to the Philippines. You touched upon it tangentially, climate change. That's perhaps I was remiss in not mentioning that, because no discussions that we have in government now do not include measures to mitigate, to adapt to climate change. We in the Philippines have once again achieved the dubious distinction of being the most vulnerable country to the effects of climate change. And so that adds another dimension to everything that we do. Because if you will remember in the remarks that I just made, everything, all the development that we talk about is premised on it being sustainable. And that is something that we really are very serious about, because we feel the effects. I was on my way here, we were all remarking on the fact that it's raining a little bit. And this is strange because we are in the middle of a drought. Beyond that, for example, here in the northern part of the country right now, we are suffering a drought. And the agricultural cost to that drought has already reached the billions of pesos. We have been able to prepare for it to a certain extent, but nonetheless, that is a problem. So that is a situation in the northern part of the country. In the southern part of the country, we're suffering floods. And this strange weather patterns are things that we are not used to. We are used to typhoons. We are used to the typhoon season coming in at a certain time of year, passing. The route of the typhoon is generally well known. And at the local level, we have been able to, we know how to prepare. But since, I would say since Yolanda or Haiyan, everything has changed. And so we need to be fairly quick on our feet when we try to analyze what is going to happen. What the scientists have been telling us for many, many years now is happening. It is not imminent. It is here. And that is one of the greatest challenges that the Philippines faces. And we are expending a great many resources and a good deal of energy to try and make sure. Of course, you can imagine agriculture is the one that is the area that's most affected, and that is a critical area. So when you look at our financial numbers, you have to isolate the shocks that are hitting the economy and remove agriculture to be able to understand clearly what is happening to the economy. Because what is happening to agriculture are shocks that are completely out of control. They are nonetheless real and have to be attended to and have to be dealt with. So the shift from fossil fuels to renewables is something that takes up a great deal of our thinking, and that is why many of the investments that we are hoping to attract are in that area, in renewables.
Well, thank you so much for underlining that. And you know, a few years ago, we used to say that we're dealing with the climate change due to the next generation and our grandchildren. But what you're saying now, President, I think you're so right, is happening now and here, the climate change. And we're seeing that the price of inaction far exceeds the price of action. But we're also touched on the digital economies. I think it would be good to have someone on this. I think Jackie Wang, Google, where are you, Jackie? I think you have a comment or a question also to the President. He already spoke a lot about the digital as an opportunity and no more digital divide.
Hello, Mr. President. Thank you so much for that speech. My name is Jackie. I'm the country manager for Google Philippines here. So you mentioned and you speak a lot of digitization. And from a Google perspective, when we look at our digital economy report, our report reflects a lot of what you mentioned about the growth potential and the amazing growth that we've seen in Philippines. In Philippines in 2023, the digital economy is as big as $23 billion in gross merchandising value, and that's a compound CAGR growth of 16%. You also mentioned the importance of digitization around upskilling and reskilling. My question for you is, what do you see is the biggest challenge when it comes to digitization, and how companies like Google, from the private sector, of many of us in this room, how can we help in this digitization journey to help make a digital Philippines?
Well, we are still at the level where we are worried about connectivity. And we are working very hard because being an island nation, that becomes a real factor, that becomes a real challenge. And to start with was with government. When we first came into office, we conducted a survey and on what are the consumers' habits when it comes to the use of the internet. And we got back a statistic which was really rather worrisome, and that was that 95% of an ordinary Filipino citizen's activities in terms of payment, for example, clearances and all that, 95% of their activity is over the internet. The last 5% was government. And that's why we still are falling behind. We are catching up though, because there have been several groups that have come in that have extended our fiber optic network and have been setting up data centers. And we are hoping we are slowly starting to design a cloud specifically for the Philippines, so that there is some security. Now, having said security, the cybersecurity problem is become quite pronounced, and this is maybe the darker side of the technology. We have many instances where there are scams and there is hacking. In terms of actual security, we also have fallen victim to a great many of these nefarious activities. And so, yes, so those are the areas that we worry about. If you want to know more, seated at your table is the Secretary of Information Technology and Communication. So I'm sure he will give you an earful as to the detailed situation here in the Philippines.
Thank you, and we will hear more from the Secretary a little bit later, so we'll tap into him. You know that there is a lot of interest now also in investing in the Philippines. And when I looked at the numbers on FDIs compared to some other countries, the FDI being invested into the Philippines are still a bit lower than in some neighboring countries. And I was thinking, Prashant Kumar, you're with KKR, KKR being one of the largest then private equity companies in the world. What will it take, and maybe you have a separate question to the President too, but if you in 15 seconds can say what it will take to get even more FDIs into the Philippines, it would be good, and maybe a question to the President.
Thank you, Borge. Mr. President, a privilege to be here with you. We have been investing in Philippines for last several years, invested with many partners, in a company called Grosari, which is enabling sari-sari stores with Lance, with Manny Pangilinan in Metro Pacific Hospitals, in Maya, to your point about digitalization, creating a digital bank, and payments access for many underbanked consumers, as well as in infrastructure in Pinnacle Towers, Frontier, which is creating telecom towers around the country and in generations. So we thank you for all of your leadership and your administration's leadership in enabling investors like us to come in and invest here. One of the points that I wanted to highlight is it'll be great for the country to really showcase success stories of investments in the country around the world. I think a lot of people would benefit from hearing more about the changes that you and your administration have made, which are really enabling investments across digitalization and infrastructure, specifically in climate, as going forward. And that's one thing which many investors around the world are less familiar about, the things that have changed. So my request would be to just really showcase some of the changes and opportunities that the country is creating. And then the second one, which we've been discussing with some of your colleagues in the administration, has been around creating the basic foundational layer for digitalization, which enable national ID, credit bureaus, around foundations which then the businesses can come in and invest in and start creating new opportunities for the consumers. So, but we are very excited about investing here. Again, question to you and your thoughts on what can we as investors, foreign investors, do to create more awareness, and what can we do to support your agenda in drawing more FDI into the country?
Thank you for that. And but I'm quite pleased that the areas that you mentioned are the areas that we are working very hard on. But these are structural changes that we have to make, and by their very nature, structural changes. Although we can make them in as quickly as possible, the effects as they go through the processes of the economy do take time, and so we have, I think, properly identified the areas that need work, and some of those have already been in terms of legislation, for example, some of those obsolete, shall we say, legislation has now been amended to be more open. We've really, there are two elements to what we have tried to do. Number one is the recognition of the private sector as a full partner in the development of the economy. And second is to open the economy and to bring more, the foreign investments in. But not foreign investments just because they're foreign investments. Foreign investments in the areas that we feel need more work, and that is why I'm pleased that the areas that you mentioned are things that we have been looking at and have started to make the necessary changes, necessary structural changes. People in Davos, we were talking about recovery. I speak of transformation. I no longer speak about recovery. We have to transform the economy, and we have to transform the way we do business. We have to transform the way we think in many ways. And that's what we are hoping to try and do. Again, my confidence really comes from the fact of the workforce that I have such great faith in, because they have the record of the Philippine workforce here and abroad, especially abroad, has been rather good, and that's why I know that Filipinos can in fact do the job, and it's just a question of us, together with private sector partners, training them and getting those skill sets making those skill sets available to them, putting up programs to make them, to certify them in whatever specific skills are necessary. So, again, it is. I suppose maybe it's a bit of a selective process in terms of the FDI coming into the country, but any additional activity, of course, is welcome. But of course, we focus as well on specific areas. We talk about agriculture, we talk about mineral processing, we talk about battery production, we talk about renewables, the renewable shift, we talk about digitalization. These are the areas that we feel need focus. And I have to say that the potential investors or the present investors who would like to expand their operations and potential investors who have yet to come to the Philippines have actually responded in those particular areas. And so I think that we are headed down the right path. It's still nip and tuck a little bit as we go along, but I think overall, I'm confident that we have made the right choices.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President. With your permission, maybe I can take one more, and then from a successful Filipino, because we're now heard from the international community, but we knew and know from the delegation you brought with you in Davos a year ago. There's so much also strong businesses here in the Philippines, and maybe it's hard to then make a choice, but I see Ramon Ang from San Miguel sitting over there. He is very eloquent, as you know. So I'm thinking, Ramon, the Philippines economy is growing fast, and I guess you're optimistic about the future. Any questions to the president?
First of all, I would like to thank the President and Borgie for this opportunity. I'd like to share with our guest today about the questions when I was in Davos 2 years ago. You know, in that conference, people are saying Philippines is not competitive because our power rates are so expensive and our fuel prices are so expensive in this country. But the truth is, Philippines, if you compare it apple to apple, actual cost of power and fuel is the lowest in Asia, except Philippine government impose excise tax and VAT. And of course, plus all other countries around the region are subsidizing their fuel and power. But of course, that cannot last forever. Like our neighboring country, Malaysia, is subsidizing $20 billion a year. And Philippines, being a modern country, tama ba yan, sir? Modern. And market force. Philippines practice market force. So in this country, we don't subsidize and we impose taxes. So, and also I'd like to share with our guests here today, do you know that Philippines is one of the earliest to develop geothermal power? Our first geothermal power was built in 1977. And today our geothermal is 2,000 megawatt. And Philippines is also one of the first in Asia to build nuclear power plant in 1976. And also we operated discovered our Malampaya natural gas early on in 1980s. So Philippines, by the way, also solar, I was talking to my colleague here. Solar was first built in the Philippines in 1980. Way ahead of everybody in Asia. So Philippines is very, very advanced during the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And the unfortunate event of military takeover stopped everything. And now we are trying to catch up thanks to our beloved president. Thank you po.
Thank you. Thank you, Ramon. Well, he has the SMC, San Miguel, has really been a very large part. Sabina Boitis is smiling. Maybe he has different figures from Ramon in terms of the power generation. We'll get into that. We'll talk about that.
We can give him the floor too, to keep the balance.
But yes, SMC has become. We just signed with them. They formed a consortium to improve our airport, which has been adjudged as being one of the worst airports for many years. So we're about to change that. That's part of the physical connectivity we talked about. But also because of tourism, the contribution of tourism to the economy is a significant number. So we're hoping to continue that. So. That is why that is precisely one of the best examples that we have of a partnership between government and the private sector, and this is one of the, I believe, despite being the largest PPP that we have ever entered into, we were able to go through the entire process in record time. And that's what we try to keep hoping for, to make sure that the roadblocks that are unnecessary that really have been part of that the evolution. One of the things that really happened here was that many things were instituted during the pandemic that no longer apply, and we have to remove those again and redesign, as it were, the economy. And so one of those areas is PPP, and thus far, I believe we have been successful in attracting that kind of that kind of arrangement. However, we do not limit ourselves to that. We look to G2G arrangements. We look to purely commercial joint venture arrangements between private corporations, and so that is our way of opening, as I said, the economy.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We would have loved this to continue for another hour, but we know, Mr. President, that very soon you will have a big interview with Bloomberg. And then we know you're seeing Secretary Blinken. So we feel very privileged that you wanted to spend time with us. And also, as we discussed in the short bilateral meeting, it's always good to have a Q&A before you go on Bloomberg, you know. So I hope this was a good warm-up for you too, for Bloomberg.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I'm very happy to always come and explain what it is that we are trying to achieve here in the Philippines, and I think that it is an important part of bringing the Philippines really to the world. And one of the comments that I made very early on again in the administration was that we have to reintroduce the Philippines to the world because we have become insular. The pandemic played a huge part in that phenomenon. So that is what I think that we have met with some success. So thank you for these opportunities such as this. I am glad to be able to explain and to give an idea to all our partners and prospective partners, give an idea on the investment terrain in the Philippines. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you.
And you just heard Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.'s interview at the question and answer session of the World Economic Forum on East Asia hosted by WEF President Borge Buende.
Dateline Malacañang.
Meanwhile, senior enlisted leaders of the Armed Forces of the Philippines or AFP and the Japan Self-Defense Force or JSDF convened for a meeting to strengthen the cooperation between the two forces. The meeting was led by AFP Deputy Chief of Staff Lieutenant General Charlton Sean Garlan, held at the AFP General Headquarters in Quezon City. Senior enlisted advisor to the Chief of Staff, Joint Staff Japan Ministry of Defense Warrant Officer Kai Osamu led the delegation from Japan. The broadening of cooperation in all levels of command between the AFP and JSDF is in accordance with the 2015 Memorandum of Understanding on Defense Cooperation. The memorandum aims to allow more military exchanges, ship visits, information sharing, and education and training exchanges between the two countries.
Dateline Malacañang.
The Philippine Chamber has adopted the proposed amendments to several economic provisions of the 1987 Constitution stipulated under the resolution of both houses or RBH number 7. A total of 288 voted in favor, 8 against, and 2 abstained during the voting. The measure aims to amend the restrictive economic provisions of the Constitution and open foreign investors to 100% full ownership in a number of sectors. This can be done by placing the words "unless otherwise provided by law" in order to give Congress the flexibility to create changes through legislation. Particularly, amendments will be made to Section 12, which mentions public utilities, Paragraph 2, Section 4 of Article 14 for education, excluding basic education, and Paragraph 2, Section 11 of Article 16 concerning advertisement.
Dateline Malacañang.
And news from the Philippine Department of Migrant Workers. The Philippines Department of Migrant Workers, or DMW, announced that the government is continuously coordinating with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, or KSA, with regards to the release of the second batch of checks for overseas Filipino worker, or OFW, claimants. According to Migrant Workers Officer in Charge Under Secretary Hans Leo Kakdak, the Saudi government has a budget for this and they are just waiting for the release of the second batch of checks. The official asked for patience as the releasing of the checks takes time, but Kakdak assured that the DMW is continuously providing assistance to OFW claimants who have died so they can get their benefits. In the first batch of 1,500 OFW claimants that received their benefits, the DMW is currently assisting 29 heirs or widows in processing their checks, while 52 OFW claimants have errors in their names. According to Migrant Workers Assistant Secretary Jerome Alcantara, the agency will issue guarantee claims so that OFW claimants can receive their benefits. For those who have problems with their claims, they may get in touch with the DMW through email at saudiclaims@dmw.gov.ph or call the agency's helpline at 0920-517-1059.
Dateline Malacañang.
And finally, the Maritime Industry Tripartite Council, or MITC, met with the Department of Migrant Workers, or DMW, and other stakeholders to discuss the situation in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. In a press briefing, Migrant Workers Officer in Charge Under Secretary Hans Leo Kakdak said among those that were discussed in the meeting was to further intensify the protection of seafarers on board ships traveling at the Red Sea and Gulf of Aden. This comes after two incidents that happened on the said sea lanes that involve Houthi rebels in November last year and March this year. Kakdak said the MITC recommended to the International Bargaining Forum, or IBF, to declare the Southern Red Sea and Gulf of Aden a warlike zone and not just high-risk areas. This would intensify the alert and give warning to seafarers. This means the MITC is encouraging ship owners to change their routes and not travel through Red Sea and Gulf of Aden. Kakdak said maritime principals should register with the DMW's electronic overseas monitoring systems if the ship will travel to the said route. If not, they will be imposed with the necessary punishment from the agency. Undersecretary Kakdak underscored the importance of the lives of seafarers and their families compared to the ship's cargo. The official also said that the MITC recognizes the seafarers' right to refuse sailing in case they were told that the ship they are boarding will cross the Red Sea or the Gulf of Aden.
Dateline Malacañang.
Before we conclude our program, we would like to invite everyone to come and visit our Facebook page and YouTube channel at Radyo Pilipinas World Service. You will be able to hear and view our Filipino and English programs, including news updates here in the Philippines. Kindly subscribe, like, and share our posts as well. And that concludes this edition of Dateline Malacañang for Radyo Pilipinas World Service. This has been Steph Vicente. Good day and stay safe, everyone.
From the Presidential Palace, Manila. Dateline Malacañang.